Cool. So hello, everyone. Welcome to the Introduction to UI and UX with Figma. My name is Stephany Lopez. I am a former DSC lead for the DSC chapter at UTRGV, and I will be leading you through this workshop today. So first, what you'll need for this workshop is internet access and a Figma account. If you don't have a Figma account, it's really, really quick to set one up. You can just go to figma.com and then create an account, and then you'll just have to confirm your email on your Gmail or inbox. So first, we'll get started with understanding what design is in general. So if you have any thoughts about what design is, go ahead and leave them in the chat below. Crafting a product. Yeah, the looks of it. Yeah, it's a great answer. Cool. So design is a lot of things. Generally, design is trying to understand how to accomplish a goal for a user perspective and then solving problems along the way. And so we're really trying to understand what the user is trying to accomplish for a specific product. So if you wanted to, I don't know, go to the airport and you wanted to check in for your flight, we would want to see what kinds of existing products exist in the market, and then try to look at pain points that exist and then resolve those issues and create something a little bit more effective and then profitable for companies. So to do this, we go through something called a design thinking process. So first we try to empathize with whoever's using the product. And so we'll look at user behavior and see what type of pain points exist, and then what current solutions exist to see how we can ideate and build up on top of those. And then after we look at a bunch of pain points and problems, then we'll begin to empathize or define the solution that we're trying to create, or define the problem. And then as soon as we have the problem defined, we can begin to ideate solutions and existing designs and apps to solve the problem that we are solving, and then, or that we're thinking of. And then after we ideate some solutions, we'll begin to prototype them with high and low fidelity prototypes. And then we'll go through this iteration several different times. So we'll test the prototypes and any existing mockups that we have. And then we'll go again to like the empathizing stage, or go back to the defining stage, to make sure that we're really fine tuning the process or the problem that we're working on, and then fine tuning the solution that we are creating to make sure that it's effective for the company and for the users as well. So before we go any further, it's important that we understand what the difference is between UX and UI. And so UX stands for user experience. And in this stage, we're trying to understand how users interact with a product. And then this stage involves a lot of wireframing and nothing high fidelity. And so when I mean high fidelity, I mean like no images yet. We're just trying to outline the structure of what the app or product will look like. And then we'll also do a lot of user research. And then we have UI designers, and UI stands for user interface. And the UI really means anything that you can see or any visual elements. So we'll have visual designs, images, typography, branding, etc. And UX and UI really go hand in hand. One cannot exist without the other. So there's a lot of different roles that you can pursue if you are interested in UX. So there's user researchers who perform quantitative and qualitative studies. There's UX designers who will work on those wireframes and functionality research. There's UI engineers who also work on front-end development and branding and any type of typography that is needed for a project. And then there's content strategists who work more closely with marketing and the branding of whatever product you're working on. And so by having experience in UX UI, you can really be flexible with the type of roles that you can pursue, which is awesome. So going into our workshop today, so what we'll be using is a tool called Figma. If you've used Photoshop, it's kind of similar to it in terms of the interface, but Figma is a collaborative interface design tool where you can collaborate with your team members in real time and get feedback. You can use a bunch of different resources like plugins and designs that people in the community in Figma have created, which is really, really awesome. So let's go ahead and get started. So we're going to Before we begin working on the project, I'll be giving an overview of the Figma editor. And so if you're new to Figma, don't worry, I will overview the toolbar, any types of panels that you'll need, pages and assets. So if you're completely new to Figma, no worries, we'll go through the entire thing together. So I'm going to leave the slides now, and I'm going to go to Figma. So I'm going to share a link in the chat. And if you have Figma, you can go ahead and direct to this link, and I'll give you all a couple of seconds to go through that. And you should have editing access. So I see Nicole is here, and I think a couple more people are joining in. So I'll give some time before we get started. But just to recap, hello, my name is Stephanie. This is the Intro to UI UX workshop, and right now we are on this Figma file. If you do not have Figma, you can create an account at figma.com. It is a relatively quick process, and then as soon as you have your Figma account, you can go ahead and open this file in the chat. And so if you're here, hello. If you're on the Figma file, could you move your cursor really quickly, just so I can see there's activity? Okay, I see cursors moving. Cool. So can you still see my screen on Figma? Yes, okay, cool. So let's go ahead and provide an overview about the Figma editor, because this can be really confusing at first glance, but I promise it'll get a lot easier as we go. So right here on top, we have the Figma toolbar. This is where you'll have the file name of the project that you're currently working on. And then we have a couple of really cool quick access tools that we have up here. So here on this icon, we have the move icon, and you can just move any elements or assets that are on your working project. Next, we have the hashtag symbol or the pound symbol, depending on your age group. And this is how we'll create some frames. And so in Figma, everything is a frame. If you were creating a mock-up for a iPhone, for example, or a mobile app, then you would want to create a frame the size or with the correct dimensions for an iPhone or for a phone. And so if you wanted to do that, you could press this hashtag symbol here and then click frame. And then on this right panel here, we can see all the different dimensions that we have available. So we have desktop dimensions for a MacBook, MacBook Pro. We also have presentations in case you wanted to create a design for a slideshow. But if you wanted to do an iPhone, for example, we could just press any one of these. And then right there, it's kind of puny, but right here we have that iPhone dimension. And then this is where you could add all of your designs. So that's the frame tool, and I'm going to zoom back out. Next, we have the shape tool, which is right here on the Navbar. And here you can add a bunch of different elements. So you could add rectangles and then change them to buttons, lines, arrows, ellipses, polygons, stars, or your own images in case you have like logos or things you wanted to add here. And so if you wanted to do that, you could create it as large or as small as you want to there. Next, we have the pen tool if you want to hand draw anything. I'm not that gifted at drawing, but if you wanted to, then you could do that with this tool up here. And then we have the T symbol or the T icon for text. And then we have the hand to just move the whole document. And then this bubble icon, which is where you could leave feedback to your team members, which is a really great tool if you're working like at a hackathon or something and you wanted to leave feedback to your team members, which is cool. Does anyone have any questions at this point? I know some people are just joining in.
Yeah, we're just notified that the last section finished a little late. So that's why I think people are tuning in now.
Okay, cool. So while we're waiting for new people to join, or while people are just joining in, we can go ahead and start playing around with Figma just so we can get comfortable with it. And so what I have right here is a tiny space project. And so is anyone familiar with MySpace? Does anyone know what that is? Yay, Crystal, thank you. Oh my gosh, awesome, I'm so happy. I spend most of my time teaching high schoolers and they're like, what's MySpace? I don't even know what that is. So it's refreshing to hear that people know it. MySpaces. But anyway, this project that we're working on, this is just an icebreaker really quickly, is a way for us to get familiar with Figma and components and colors, just to get used to the editor itself. And so I've created a profile for myself right here. And I have a bunch of different boxes about like my interests and about me. And so what I'd like for everyone to do while we wait for more people to get in and also get familiar with Figma is to create your own profile. And so this is mine, and there are a bunch of different templates here that you can use, or you can build your own by going towards the right and using some of these components. So you could just copy these by selecting it and then copying and pasting, and then you can just move it. Or you can use one of these templates here. But yeah, let's go ahead and get comfortable with Figma and learn how to use some of these components together. So you can use any one of these templates, or you can create them by yourself. And so I have one larger template and then these smaller windows. And if you wanted to create your own, you could just use this and move it away, or copy it first, and then just drag those windows inside. So yeah. So I'll give us about 5 minutes, and we can have some time to play around with the tiny spaces. And I'll create one from scratch so you all can see what I'm doing in case you're just joining in and not really comfortable with Figma just yet. But does anyone have any questions while we're building our profiles? Does anyone happen to know how to open the file with Figma instead of the browser? You should have an option like on the menu, three-line icon, to open it from the Figma app. I don't have the option because I'm already on the app, but yeah, or actually if you log into the application on your desktop, you should be able to look at your most recent projects. And so if you're on the application from your desktop, you can go here to the Figma symbol and then look at all your recent projects. And then this one should come up. So I hope that helped. Didn't show up in the project section. What? That is bananas. I'll type the link again. Maybe it will be on the 3-line icon to open the project in the Figma app, but a little strange that it's not coming out there. Okay, cool. Any other questions at this point? So let's go ahead and create. Hi. So to anyone just joining, hello. Right now we're on the Figma app. If you're new to Figma, don't worry. This is a just really quick icebreaker section or session to get started by learning the Figma editor. So right now we're on the Figma file, and we're creating our own tiny space, which is like a play on MySpace. And you can use one of these templates that's right here, unless someone's claimed it. Oh, and if you want to, if you're using one template, so let's say I were to use this pink one, I would suggest that you rename it. So I can do this by pressing, by right-clicking on the template that I'm working on, and then clicking rename. Where is it? Or actually, you can click the template that you're working on and then press Command R or Control R on your keyboard to rename it. And so I'll name this Stephany Working Template, just so there's no confusion as to what template is available or not. And then I'll undo that, just in case anyone wants it. So yeah. Any questions at this point? So let's go ahead and build a template together in case you can find this link or this project on the link that Tails has provided in the chat. So if you're opening it in your browser, it'll look something like this. It's taking a while to load. Okay, so if you're opening it in your browser, it'll look something like this. And then you'll just log into your Figma account so you can start editing. So let's go ahead and build a profile together. In case you're new, you're not sure which template's available, let's go ahead and build one together. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to get the template or the base of my choice. I'm going to go ahead and get the green one and I'm going to copy and paste it. And it'll go to the same location. So I'm going to just drag it out to the gallery and then place it right here. Okay, so if you're following along, go ahead and do that. Go ahead and create your own base and then drag it out. Cool, I see people's bases. Okay, so just to recap, all we've done is we've gotten our base, copied it, and then pasted it to our gallery over here. Cool. So if you copied and duplicated your base, don't be afraid to pull it out if somebody else is on that same color. Your work is independent to your own, and you could always go back in case you need to, or in case you accidentally removed something. Oh, cool. I see a couple of people that have their own bases already, so let's go ahead and move to the next step. To rename the template, all you'll have to do is just click on the template that you just copied, and then you're going to press Command R on your keyboard, or Control R on your keyboard if you're on Windows. So cool. So now that we have our base, let's go ahead and add some of these fun little windows here. And so to do that, I'm just going to navigate to these windows over here and copy one. And so to just copy, I'm just going to copy and paste like I would normally on my keyboard. And I'm going to drag it to my template. And so this is what mine looks like. And then now that we have a window and a base, we can modify some of this information to tailor it to ourselves because it's our space, you know? So I'm going to change my name here. I'm going to just put Stephany Lopez. And if you wanted to change the font, you could go to this right panel right here and select the text that you'd like to change, and then change the font right here. So it says Roboto Mono. And I want to change it to something more fun to tailor it to my own. Let's go ahead and add Avenir. And so now we have the font that's changed. Cool. And then location, I'm going to put Texas because that's where I'm located at right now. Or if you want, you can put your university name if you're a university student. So I'll put UTRGV, which is where I go to school. And then if you all want to follow me later, I'm Stephany Lopez pretty much everywhere on the internet. So cool. I see a lot of people adding their bases and some components. And so feel free to grab whatever components are most interesting to you. So if you want to add a picture, you can copy one of these components here. And you can copy it the way that you would normally on your keyboard. So I'm going to copy and paste. And then I'm going to drag it to my space over here. And feel free to grab them from the templates as well. You can copy them. You'll just have to double click a couple of times. But yeah, you can just copy and paste right there. So I'll give everyone a 5 minutes for this step so you can familiarize yourself with Figma, copying and pasting things into your space. And then we'll move on to the next step. But does anyone have any questions at this point? Has anyone ever used Figma before? Doggy. Yeah, some fun dogs. I haven't, but it seems pretty intuitive to use. Yeah, so Figma is actually a really great app. If you've used Photoshop or something similar, like I think GIMP is another platform that you can use for photo editing. You could use Figma specifically to prototype any type of applications that you're working on. And so if you were creating an app, and I'll actually give an example here. So while everyone's creating their profiles, I'll give a demo of an app that I've worked on. And let me show. And so I use Figma for a lot of things. I use it for like Photoshop or things that you aren't supposed to traditionally use for Figma. But that's the great thing about it, is that you can really use it for anything that you want to work on. And so these are some mock-ups for credit cards. And we can go ahead and press a frame. And let's say we wanted to look at how this would look like on a phone. What we could do is we could click our frame and then press the play button on the toolbar. And then we can see what it would look like on that phone interface. And so we can see a larger image of what that would look like. And this is just one example, but let me find another one. So this is a project I worked on at a hackathon. And this was a mobile app. And this was like a Tinder app, but for dog adoptions. And this is what that app would look like. And so we can see what it will look like if you were on your phone, and you can swipe and then get started. And so you can do all of this with Figma. If you're not a developer, you could enter all of this information and create all of these screens as if you were developing it yourself, to kind of create a vision of what the app would look like and how it would solve problems without coding it yourself, which is a really great tool to have, even if you are a developer, because sometimes it's better to have a visual element before you start creating or developing the app itself, because then you know what you want to create rather than spending your time going through that design phase again and again. And then by creating these fidelity for prototypes, you just have a clear vision as to what to develop. So that's a great reason why you should learn UI and UX. It's a really valuable skill to have. Cool. So I see some people are still working on their tiny spaces, and that's great. But I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next portion of this. And if you want to keep working on your tiny space, go for it. I have all of the instructions set up for the tutorial, so you can go ahead and visit that later. So let's go ahead and talk about Figma a little bit more. So as I mentioned, this top bar is called the Figma Toolbar. Right here we have the left panel, and then here we have the right panel. And so in the left panel, we have a lot of different things happening. And so these text names right here are the names of any type of elements that we have on our editor. And so if I were to click this profile, I could see that this is the element that I'm working on. And if I press that arrow, I can see what things I have on this specific element. And so all of our elements in our editor will be here. But aside from elements, we also have pages in this project. And so right now we're on the Start Here page, but we also have some other pages for this project. And so what we'll be doing today is we'll be creating a mock-up of the Stripe homepage. And so there are a lot of different things you can do with Figma, but I wanted to go through an example of an actual breathing product that exists in the industry to show you how straightforward it is to go through the design process by creating something similar. And so if you're just new to design, one thing I would recommend is to replicate some of the things that exist already, so you can get familiar with how other companies design their content and then use that inspiration to design your own. And so today we'll be developing or designing this homepage from scratch using Figma. So to do that, we'll have a couple of different things. So if you're still working on your tiny space, that's fine. But I want to show you the design system that we'll be using today. So in design, we'll have a couple of different things. We'll have some guidelines as to what the typography will look like and the color palette to make sure that everything is uniform, consistent, and homogeneous throughout the entire project. And so in the typography, we have a specific font and size and style for the headers. So header 1, header 2, header 3, and then some body specifications. And then we also have our color palette to make sure that everything is consistent. And we can see that on the right panel here. So we can see that all of these colors that we've set out for our color palette are here in our color styles, and our text styles are here as well. So let's go ahead and get started by creating the project. So if at any point you feel lost or confused or excuse me, or if you want to revisit a step or you forgot what we did, I have all of the instructions written down here just in case you miss a step or you want to go back to something. Go ahead and refer to the instructions that are listed right here. But for now, let's go ahead and get started. So I am on the playground page on the left panel. If you're on the left panel, go ahead and click playground. And then you should see a page similar to this. So is everyone here? I see cursors, so exciting. Cool, so I see most people here. So the very first thing we're going to do is look at our finished prototype. So this is the prototype that we are going to create today. And the very first thing that we need to do is we need to create our base. So our base is going to be a size of a frame that's the size of a desktop. And we're going to go ahead and create that. Now you have two options here. You can create the frame from scratch, or you can copy this template. Now, when you copy the template, just make sure that you are clicking it, copying it, and then moving it away, and then rename the project to your name. So I'm going to go ahead and click template right here. I'm going to Command C, Command V, and then I'm going to move it right here. And I'm going to rename it Stephany Working Doc. And I see some saboteurs here. So I'm going to just move this element just in case it wasn't anyone else's. But make sure that you're copying the template and then pasting it and then rename that template so that we know that that's your template and not anyone else's or not a free one. So I'll go ahead and remove this. So just to recap, we're just copying the template and we are renaming the file with our name. And just a reminder, to rename the file, you'll just press Control R or Command R. Does anyone have any questions? This process should be a little bit similar to the tiny space because we're copying an element and then pasting it or duplicating it. So I'll copy the template here. So here's some templates just in case anyone wants to grab it. So these two are free. If you want to grab one of these, then just click it, click the file name, and then rename it with your name. I think that there might be some trouble copying the template. And so if you want to copy an element, not just like a single thing, click the file name. And so this one would say template, click template, and you'll know that it's selected when you see template in blue, and then copy and paste it, and that should help. Awesome, I see templates. Okay, could I get a thumbs up in the chat if you are ready to move on? No thumbs up. Is everyone okay? Okay, I see one thumbs up. Okay. Cool. Great. Looks like some people are ready to move on. Great. So awesome. I see templates and I see people's names. So awesome. Let's go ahead and go to the next step. So I'm going to go ahead and be working solely out of this document right here, which is my own. And I'm going to move it over here so there's no confusion. And what we'll be doing is we'll be constantly referring back to this prototype right here, okay? So now that we have our template and our base, what we're going to do next is get that diagonal header photo in the back so it looks really beautiful and it's a gradient. So let's go ahead and do that. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to click that header document, which is this gray rectangle, and I'm going to double click it so that we can adjust the corners and the dimensions of the rectangle. And so when you double click it, you should see these 4 white circles on the rectangle. And I'm going to drag the bottom right corner, and I'm going to move it halfway so we get this really beautiful diagonal. And then I'm going to double click, and then it should look something like this. So let's check on everyone and see what's going on. Beautiful. Okay, does anyone have any help? Anyone need me to repeat that? So I'll do it again here on this template. To create that diagonal edge, I'm going to double click on the rectangle, and I'm going to drag the bottom right corner and bring it about halfway. And I think that somebody may have duplicated the rectangle a couple times, which is okay. Oh, maybe a lot of times. Okay, we'll just keep deleting until they go away. There we go. So now we have our rectangle with that diagonal edge. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Is everyone able to do it? So I can, oh, if you have this issue, so if you can look at my screen, you can see that when we have the diagonal edge and we have the rectangle, it's because the rectangle has been duplicated 2 times. So we can just delete the rectangle that doesn't have the diagonal edge. And then we should eventually get to the one that does, which is right there. So like bugs in code, you have several bugs in editing and design, and it's usually because you duplicated an element twice, which is okay. It happens all the time. Cool. So now that we have our diagonal edge, I'm going to go ahead and get started on that background, that really beautiful gradient that we have here. So the first thing that we're going to do is we're going to change the color and from gray to that gradient. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to click the rectangle, and I'm going to look towards the right panel and find the fill section right here. And we can see that the color, the fill is set to this color gray. We want to change it from a solid color to a gradient. So I'm going to click the gray rectangle, and I'm going to see, so right now we can see the color editor, and we're going to change the option from solid to linear gradient. And so now we'll have something like this. And if we go back to our reference, which is the stripe.com website, we can see that the gradient is at a diagonal as well, similar to the edge. And so we're going to drag the gradient so that it's going upwards to the left. So now we have this gradient. And now we're going to change the color of the gradient so that it could best represent the prototype. And so you can change the colors to whatever it is that you prefer. I'm just going to change it to what looks like the Stripe website. And so that's pink, oh wait, no, purple, pink, and this burnt orange. Yeah, that looks like it. Okay. And so it doesn't look like it exactly, but it's okay. Right now we're just getting the bare minimum of this gradient, and then we will change it later. Oh my gosh, look at these beautiful gradients. So they don't have to look exactly like a Stripe one. You can change it to be custom to your own. I see some people creating their own gradients, which is exciting, but this is just the one that I chose. Awesome. Any questions at this point? Woo. Awesome. Okay, is everyone ready to move on? Thumbs up if you are. See some thumbs up. Okay. Cool. So the next thing we're going to talk about is, so now we have our header photo, our header background. And the next thing that we'll do is start adding some pieces of text to tell our users what they're landing on, what type of services or product that they're trying to use. And so Stripe is a payment processing API. If you're not familiar with Stripe, that's okay, but we're really going to start is adding some text so we can tell our users what platform they're looking at. And to do this, we're going to add something called a component. So on the left panel, let's go ahead and navigate to the components page. And so if you've ever done any type of web development, you're probably familiar with the concept of div elements. And so a div element is just something that you use constantly within your website. And it's the same concept for design. And in design, we refer to these as components. And so on a website, you'll usually find the same type of assets so that the entire product or platform is homogeneous and it's all consistent. And so on the Stripe website, we can see that there are pill buttons almost everywhere on the page. And everything is very, very consistent within the brand colors and the design system. We have pill buttons almost everywhere. And to avoid creating rectangles and making sure that the corners are rounded each time, we create a component so that we can reference that component each time and then just customize it when needed. And so we have some components already made here. So like if I were to create a paragraph, I could just add this. And if I wanted to create a button or add a button, I would just add it for my components. And so let's go ahead and create a component for our header tag. And so we're going to create a component for this tagline right here that says payments infrastructure for the internet. And so to do this, we will be adding some text. And so on the side here, I'm going to create some text. And this is going to be our header tag, right? So it's going to be the largest header, which is heading 1. And I'm going to put title goes here. Not sure why it's crazy. I'm going to put title goes here. Actually, I'm going to put title goes in this section. And the spacing looks kind of funky right now. So, so we want this to be a little bit spread out. And we want this sizing of this header to be the sizing that's set out for us in our design system. And so this way we don't have to guess which size of the font is correct. We don't want to say, is it 112 pixels or is it 113? So we want to make sure that it's homogeneous or consistent with our design system. And so to do this, we're going to click our element and we're going to make sure it's aligned to the left. That way it is similar to the Stripe website. And then to change the sizing of the text, we're going to press this 4 dot icon and then click the heading 1 style. And then our text should immediately go to this because it has all of the pre-configured settings for our heading. And so if you've typed out something, go ahead and go to the right panel, click the icon that says style, which has a little grid, 2x2 grid. And then we're going to click heading 1. And then we should see this. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Any questions? How do you add the text box? Great question. So to add the text box, what you're going to do is you're going to click the T icon from the toolbar, and then you're going to just click anywhere on the document. And then that's where you can add your text. Oh. And so now that you have your text, go ahead and click the style icon right here, and then click body. Click heading 1, sorry. Heading 1, it should look like this. Is everyone able to do that? Any questions at this point? Cool. Looks like people are getting it. Yeah. So now that we have our title, what we want to do is, so this right now is just a text element. It's not a component yet. And so let me show you what it looks like to add a component to our project. And so let's say we're right here on our current document and we want to add a button, right? Or add one of the components we created. We would go to the left panel and we would click Assets. And then here we have a list of all of the component that we've created so far. And so if we wanted to add the logo, I could just drag out the component I want and then add it here to the top where the logo usually would be. And that's how I would add that. And so right now we can't see that heading that we just created because we haven't made it a component yet. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's navigate back to the components page. And let's go ahead and right click our heading that we just created. And we're going to click Create Component. And we're going to rename this heading 1. And so now when we go to our playground, back to our project, we can see that our title is there. And so now we can just drag it out and it's the exact measurements that it needs to be. And it is consistent with the design system. Does anyone have any questions at this point? Can you tell me again how to create the title? Yes, so what we'll do is we'll create the text box by clicking the T from right here. And then we're going to click here and then just type title goes in this section. So I'll give you all a couple of seconds to go through that. And then after you've done this, you can go to the right panel and make sure that, so I'll go ahead and take off this one. And so if after you've typed title goes in this section, you'll go to the right panel and click the 2x2 grid icon that says style when you hover over it. And then make sure it's on the heading 1 setting. Should heading 1 be changing the size of the text? Yes. It'll change it to whatever's configured into the design system. Awesome, I see this one's created. Or you can just copy and paste it. If you're having a difficult time creating it on your own, you can just copy and paste it. Not a problem at all. And then after you've copied and pasted it, you can right click and then click Create Component. And then just rename it so that it's a little bit easier to read in the assets page. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next step since we have at least one component created, and I see that some other people have also created theirs as well. So now we have our title here, and I'm going to go ahead and change it to this text right here. And it says payments. Oh, well, looks like there are two. I'm going to say, change it to the text that's on the website. So it's payments infrastructure for the internet. And so if you're adding the component to your own window here, all you'll do is go to the left panel, click Assets, and then click the heading 1, and then drag it out to your document. There you go. And then I see that some of you may have it behind the header, just make sure that the heading 1 component is above the rectangle that we just created. Super cool gradient. And it's important to note that the heading should be just a little bit lower than the top of the document. So you could leave some room for the navbar. To undo something, you'll press Command Z on your keyboard. I think somebody undid the component that we created. So I'll go ahead and do it again. Oh, I think somebody changed it here. There you go. Okay, so that should fix it. There we go. Cool. So does everyone have their title there on their window? I see some people. I think somebody keeps changing the font of this one. Not sure what happened there. Oh, if the Helvetica font is not in your library, then you have to download it yourself. So I'm going to change this back to Helvetica. If you don't, it's okay. Just choose the font that's closest to you, and then we'll move on. But now what we're going to do is now that as soon as we have the text on our header, and it seems like most of you have the text on there, we're going to go ahead and add the assets there as well. And so if we go back to the Stripes homepage, we can see that there's this little desktop and phone mockup. So let's go ahead and add those assets as well. I've already created them for you, so we don't spend all of our time on there. So I'm going to go ahead and drag it out of here, and I'm on the Assets tab on the left panel. I'm going to drag this out there, and I'm also going to drag the phone as well. And it should look something like this, similar to the Stripe website. Does everyone have those two assets on their page? Yay. Cool. So it looks like we have our heading, we have our mockups on there. And the next thing that we're going to do is we're going to just add the little bit of paragraph text right here. And I'm just going to copy the text here. It's a little bit lengthy, so I'm going to just copy it. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to add an asset for paragraph text here. And so if we go back to our components, we can see that our paragraph text is here. And I'm going to get the paragraph small block and add that right in the bottom of my heading. So I'm going to look here and it says paragraph small. I'm going to add it right below my heading. And so I'm going to add it right here. And don't worry if your font looks a little bit different from the mock-up. I think somebody may have had to swap the font. It's okay, you can change it later. But it's important that we just have it right below our heading. So it'll look like this. And now we're starting to see it come to life. And so we have our heading, we have our small paragraph text, and I actually am going to swap the sample text that's right here for the text that we got from the Stripe website. So let's see how everyone else is doing. Awesome. I see Valentina's going almost done with the mockup already. And so after you've added the heading and the paragraph text, all that's left to do is add those buttons that are in our components already. And so in design, there's usually two things or two buttons that you'll have on the home screen. And so one will be with a filled colored background, and that's usually what we want users to click when they see the home page. And so in Stripes, we want that what the designers want is for people to start now with the platform. And then the button that's next to it usually has no background, and that's for a secondary button that we want people to interact with. But the primary one will always have a fill as a background. So we have this primary button, and then we have the secondary one for existing users, most likely. And then we should see something like this. And so now we're almost halfway done with the prototype. So all that's left here is to add some company logos and then the rest of the Navbar. But does anyone have any questions at this point? It seems like most people got the gist of Figma. I see that a lot of people have their buttons and their. Does anyone have any questions at this point before we go to the next step? So the last thing that we'll be doing is we'll be adding our links for our Navbar. Any questions? Cool, don't think there are any questions. So the next thing that we'll do is we're going to add some text for the Navbar. So I'm going to go ahead and zoom into my project. And I'm going to click the text symbol from the toolbar, and I'm going to type products. And so right now we're at this font, but we want to make sure that it's consistent with the design document. And so we're going to go to styles and click buttons. And then change the fill from black to white. And so now we're going to just add it at the end of our heading. And so all I did was just create a text element and then name it from one of the options that are here in the Navbar. And so we have products, use cases. So I'll go ahead and copy that same one, and I'll just align it next to the one that I created previously. So I have use cases, and then we have developers here. Developers. You want to make sure that when you align something that they have the same spacing, and so we can see in the bottom there that these are spaced 53 pixels apart from each other. You have to play around with this a little bit, but it's okay. So 53. And then the next option we have is company and pricing. So we'll just copy this twice. Once for company. And then we'll align this one so it's even with the other one. And then pricing. And then make sure that those are aligned as well. Cool. So now I'm going to move these a little bit towards the center and make sure that it's centered with the logo. And then the last thing that we'll need to do for our navbar is just add the sign in button. And that's another one of those secondary buttons for existing users to the platform. And so to do that, the asset is already created. So we'll drag the sign in button and add it to our navbar. And there we go. So this is why components are so important, because we don't have to spend time creating rectangles, aligning or changing the corners, setting text, setting icons. If we do it just once, we can just drag it and duplicate it again and again and again, and for however many instances that we need it throughout our application. But that is the first half of the project. And I'm going to go ahead and stop here so that you all can feel encouraged to finish this project later. This Figma file will exist forever. So if you want to come back to this project and do the second half of this, which is just adding the logos and then adding this other section to the homepage, feel free. I have added the instructions step by step towards the left, and you can see them all right here. And so we reached step 8. So you only have about 5-ish steps left, which is pretty exciting. And that's how we've created a mock-up today. So it looks like most of you are done. If you're not, don't worry about it. Feel free to work on this on your own time and then keep working on your tiny space if you'd like to. But that is it for today's session. Does anyone have any questions?